Poltergeists are usually associated with an individual. Hauntings seem to be connected with an area. A house, usually.
Poltergeist disturbances are fairly short duration, perhaps a couple of months. Hauntings can go on for years.
Broadcasting live from the dark and cold dungeons deep beneath the KLAV studios in Las Vegas, Nevada. Prepare yourselves to be taken away into another dimension as we now have control over your thoughts, fears, and perspective of the unexplained world you dare not speak of. With your hosts, Lindsay Knight and Michael Knight. Ladies and gentlemen, we now open the gates to the paranormal and beyond.
Broadcasting live from the KLAV studios in Las Vegas, Nevada, this is the Paranormal and Beyond. Is it possible that a man can achieve immortality to live forever? That is the startling claim of a historical figure known as Count de Saint-Germain. As records date his birth to the late 1600s, some believe that his longevity reaches back to the time of Christ. From the middle of the 17th century through the latter part of the 20th century, Saint-Germain has appeared many times throughout history, even as recently as 1970s, always appearing to be about 45 years old. Who was this mysterious man, and are the stories of his immortality mere legend, or is it just possible that he really did discover the secret of defeating death? When we return, we will discuss what renowned 18th century philosopher Voltaire referred to as a man who never dies. Count Saint-Germain will return right here on the Talk of Las Vegas, KLAV 1230 AM.
Your ticket to the unknown is at NightsparanormalResearchSociety.com. UFOs, ghosts, aliens, hauntings, mysterious places, and more can be found at NightsparanormalResearchSociety.com. Nights with a K, ParanormalResearchSociety.com. Based out of Las Vegas, Nevada, Nights Paranormal Research Society is owned and operated by the renowned brother and sister team of Michael and Lindsay Knight. Seeing is believing. And at NightsparanormalResearchSociety.com, you're going to believe. Join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight, for the Paranormal and Beyond. Join host Michael Knight and Lindsay Knight as they investigate the unexplained and most controversial mysteries of the world. The Paranormal and Beyond, where the paranormal lives on and conspiracies exposed. The Paranormal and Beyond, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight. Brought to you by NightsparanormalResearchSociety.com. Welcome back to the Paranormal and Beyond. Join us at 731-1230. Here again, Lindsay and Michael.
Welcome back to another brand new edition of the Paranormal and Beyond. But first, be sure to check us out at NightsparanormalResearchSociety.com. where you can link up to all the past shows by simply clicking on that archive link above. That's Night. Paranormal Research Society.com. Ever wanted to pursue a career in acting? Well, start acting right now by logging on to HollywoodBoundActingAcademy.com. Once again, that's HollywoodBoundActingAcademy.com. Special shout out to all those listening online through the KLAV1230AM.com website, and all you guys driving around the town listening to us on your stereos. I'm your host, Michael Knight. Alongside of me is your hostess, Lindsay Knight, and we are your radio vigilantes, spreading truth and knowledge to all those who dare listen to it. How you doing, Lindsay?
I'm always doing well. How are you, Michael?
Well, coming off a cold, my voice is a little bit horsey, but the show must go on, and we have a very interesting topic today. If you believe in immortality, a lot of people wish to have, well, I don't, especially living in these times. And what's to come? It's basically a prison in your mind. And we're going to talk about some guy who's seen throughout history, Count Saint-Germain. And it's just a very mystical figure who's seen all the way back, if you believe, since the crucifixion all the way up to maybe today. Is this guy still today dodging death and walking around amongst us under an alias that we don't know about? But first, let's get into the news.
Topping the news for the paranormal and beyond this Friday, October 11th, Catholic Charities said thanks but no thanks to a donation proposed by Kuma's Corner, a Chicago area restaurant that launched its new burger last week. The catchy name, Ghost Burger, is being offered through the month of October and comes with a red wine reduction sauce and topped off with a controversial, unconsecrated communion wafer. In a statement made by the owner of the restaurant, "We are standing with our policy of supporting charity in Chicago at large. We have made a $1,500 donation to the Catholic Charities of the Chicago Archdiocese, as we understand that they share our mentality of serving anyone in need from any walk of life. In an attempt to resolve the issue, a statement was made by the other party, saying the Eucharist is a central part of the Catholic faith, which strongly urges Kuma's Corner to discontinue selling a burger that disrespects the faith and the faith of all Christians. The money donated will be returned to Kuma's account in a couple of days." In other news, an Ohio man is finding out there's no easy way to come back from the dead. Donald Miller Jr. went to court this week to ask a county judge to reverse a 1994 ruling that declared him legally dead after he had disappeared from his home 8 years earlier. But the judge turned down the request, citing a 3-year time limit for changing a death ruling. Mr. Miller resurfaced about 8 years ago and went to court so that he could get a driver's license and reinstate his social security number. His ex-wife actually opposed the move, saying that she doesn't have the money to repay the Social Security benefits that were paid out to her and the couple's 2 children after Miller was declared dead. Robin Miller said her husband vanished because he owed a big child support payment, total of $26,000 that was long overdue. Donald Miller, who returned to Ohio in 2005, told the judge that he had lost his job and had other problems, and that's why he disappeared in the early 80s. Leaving in Florida and Georgia at the time. Reporting the news for the Paranormal and Beyond, this is Lindsay Knight.
Wow, that's very weird about that Ghost Burger. Just because you put a wafer in there that resembles some kind of communion thing, you got to ask the Vatican for permission. And then on top of that, pay them more money so they don't come down on you.
I'm actually more astounded at the guy who's declared dead.
Exactly. I mean, that's his wrongdoing.
And why would you come back to Ohio after all those years and try to get a driver's license and Social Security, knowing that you were declared dead?
I don't know. Did it disappear on purpose?
He did, because he owed $26,000 in child support.
Well, I guess now the courts know about him. And talking about coming back for your identity, we're going to get into our main topic, which is Saint-Germain. Now, this is a story that I've seen throughout doing research, doing shows for the Paranormal and Beyond, but really didn't catch my eye. But he keeps popping up, and that's our show today, about him popping up over through time. And although there's a lot of reports on this guy when he's actually born, and we're talking about somewhere in the 17th century, we're not really sure. Nobody's really sure because, once again, could this be more of a folklore that has progressed through history and, things got mixed up, so you got more storytelling? Or do we have fact here? Because he has been seen in pivotal times at the most right time in the right place when we're talking either it's here in America during wars or even stuff we're going to talk about that'll like blow your mind. Whether you believe it or not, that's up to you.
Well, it's kind of hard not to believe, only because there's so many different people in, so many different walks of life during different, times in history, that this guy's name has just keep coming up, not because it was written in textbook, but because they've actually talked and lived, in through this guy's,
most importantly,
life.
Also saw him. So you have reoccurring people who come across Saint-Germain, and it's like, you can't be the same person, And
when I say that they walked through pretty much his eyes and his walk of life, it's pretty much because of the stories he told, about his past, and he even told stuff about the future.
Well, yeah, it's like that movie Dorian Gray, where he basically sells his soul to
without the mirror
to the devil, yeah, and encompasses and stops, basically freezes his youthfulness, and goes through life. And there's this part in the movie where he comes back. Like how many years later, 40 years later, and everybody he knew are old people, but he comes back still young, and they're looking at him like, how is this possible? But this is typically of what we're going to talk about with this figure who resembles like that. So let's get into basically where they're stating he was born. Who does he come from? And he does come from a prominent history with wealth and all this. And basically in the 1600s. He was supposed to be the son of the Transylvanian prince.
What records state back that he was actually born in 1690 in Transylvania to Francis Rakoczy II, Prince of Transylvania. So, is he actually related to Vlad?
Well, he is. Basically, Vlad. And not only that, Elizabeth Bathory. We did a story on her. And you could pretty much say the immortality of what you have Dracula today is a mixture of,
and it's ironic. It's ironic that you talk about the immortality, dating back to Bathory, because if we did a story on Elizabeth Bathory, and this is a woman who is the most profound known serial killer, even in today's history. Dating all the way back to, I believe, the 1500s. That's when she was actually, there, around. But this woman actually killed over 600 girls just to bathe in their blood to keep the fountain of youth going, and
yeah, so there's a resemblance about when you're talking about capturing youth. It echoes even in the past.
Well, she did it in the dark side anyways.
Yeah, so he's tied to the Rakoczy family, and this is a wealthy family in Transylvania. And, talks that he came from the prince, Rakoczy II at the time. But there's also talks that he was, he came from different parts. Tibet, he was this, this Jew in another place. So, like I said, nobody can really pinpoint on who this gentleman was. But it wasn't until, 1942 when he came into the European society, and we're talking about, the balls and all this, where he attracted a lot of people because his demeanor, what he brought to the table, the way he carried himself. This was a guy, if you were throwing a party today and you've met him, he stuck out like a sore tongue. Not because he looked like Liberace or something like that and was a disco ball, because of what came out of his mouth. This guy was a very, very intellect, way ahead of his times. He knew everything. And let's talk about how smart this guy was.
Well, I do want to talk about that, but, we forgot one key pivotal moment about his birth and, the records dating back again to 1690. But, it actually goes beyond that, further back to Jesus, and apparently he was there at that time. And in the Bible, he's supposed to be Solomon, the prophet, Samuel in the 11th century BC. Also, it's also claimed that he was Saint Joseph, father of Jesus and husband of Mary, and then Saint Alban, first martyr of Britain in the 3rd century. And the reason why I say that is because this guy, throughout history, and we're gonna dissect this, that he took on different forms of high society, like the Catherine the Great, Madame Pompadour.
He had a lot of influence, and that's how he came to be recognized everywhere he went.
Or he's disguised himself.
Yeah. But, like let's say you were immortal. You can't just be hanging around all the time because people will start catching on. And, immortality, you're basically outliving generations. So there comes a point in time, if you're immortal, you got to hide from the public, or you got to change your whole name or move away to a different place. But you still carry that personality of knowledge. And this is what attracted a lot of people towards him. I mean, when he came into the European society, he was like basically close friends with King Henry the 15th, and his whole court loved him.
Well, he was well known for back then alchemy was like huge. Everybody tried to master alchemy. He was actually known to be Merlin, as a matter of fact.
Well, that was a past life, or probably him
exactly.
himself. Well, alchemy, for those who don't know, is basically like a science.
It's a mystical science, and the purpose of that is to strive to control elements. The foremost goal was to create projection powder, or the elusive philosopher's stone. When you add that together, you make a molten from different bases, and such materials would lead to gold and silver.
Well, exactly. Okay, this guy, like I said, let's go back to, the time of King Henry the 15th. He would entertain the courts just by what he said. This guy was so knowledgeable when it came to history. When he talked to people, and to this day, the old memoirs going all the way back to, Madame Pompadour and all this, they talk about him. It acted, though, when he spoke about history, it sounded like he was there. He recalled everything. And not only that, he was a prophet himself. He he warned the kings of Europe about the impending doom and what was to be about the kingdom. He knew a lot of mathematics. Like you said, he knew a lot of alchemy. He was said that he could take flaws away from diamonds. So you could, have a VS3 diamond and turn it into a flawless VS1 with no, what do they call it, spots in the diamonds, and would clarify them. Now, that sounds very, very weird when we talk about more like a magic, or, like the whole Merlin thing. But he was just out there like that. He wore a lot of diamonds. He had a lot of jewelry. People did not know where his money came from. But if you believe that he came from, the Transylvanian prince, Rákóczi II, then it's very explainable where you think this guy would get the money. But as he went through, time and time within European, it said he wandered 40 years in Europe alone. We're talking about Europe, 40 years in Europe. And throughout this whole time, he stayed looking like 45. He would run into old people in the courts who've had dramatically aged during then, and when they met him, they could not believe how he looked. Although they asked him, he never admitted to it, but he never denied it. He never admitted or denied anything, any rumors to that, or gave out his secret.
This guy actually had, so many skills. He acquired so much knowledge throughout, God, who knows how long this guy has been alive, But let's just say that he was, proficient in 12 different languages.
So if you look back then, okay, he knew everything at Chinese, all these languages that he knew. Not only that, he was a great painter. This guy was a musician. He was a savant. He could play his violin or anything he touches without any sheet music. And this would dumbfound a lot of people on how he would do this. We're talking about a time where, it'd take a long time, months to compose music, especially sheet music, but he will do it like the back of his hand.
Yes, he was a savant when it came to the violin. He was an expert. People were so astonished at how well this guy played. But not only that, he had so many other skills. Like I was saying, whenever he traveled, though, he set up an extensive laboratory for his alchemy work. So what exactly was he doing behind the scenes? He also had this huge, amount of money, great wealth, and he never had any bank accounts to account for, and nobody ever knew where this guy got his money. It was a complete secret.
He must have had money, or he was making gold. Like I said, he spoke, 22 languages. He was fluent in everything.
I said 12, but if it was 22, my
he
God,
probably
this guy.
spoke more alien talk or whatever.
You know what's strange, though, is that he actually went, and dined with his friends on numerous occasions. That was like one of his favorite things, was to go out with different people and dine out. But he never was seen eating.
See, that's the weird part. He was not seen eating. Although they seen him drinking wine, he would never eat. And we're talking about a socialite who was out there, put out there by, King Henry himself. He had a lot of friends. Okay, now we go back. Could he have acquired the languages from travel? We're talking about a lot of travel. We're talking about China, Singapore, and even lost languages this guy knew. All right, he was a very intellect, and everybody was so mesmerized about this guy. They did not know what to make of him. There was nobody seen like this before, I guess, in their generation of lifetime, maybe somebody before that. But he was just an astounding mind. His etiquette was also proper.
And it's true, because let's just talk about his clothing for one. You said that he can take the flaws out of diamonds, and apparently he could take several little diamonds and make it into one big diamond.
Although he never did that in front of an audience. He was asked before from the memoirs that he never presented what he can do in front of people.
Not to mention he made pearls grow larger in size.
Exactly. So could he got his money by making his own?
By putting base metals together?
Yeah, absolutely.
He could have, absolutely. And another thing about this guy is that he created a lot of recipes for removing wrinkles, and not to mention for removing hair and dye in your hair.
He was dyeing hair. He was basically Avon at the time as well. He was all over the place.
We're gonna go down the list. When we come back on the hour, we're going to go down the timeline of who he met and what he acquired and who he actually influenced throughout his time from 1690 till his death.
But did you know this also? He was arrested twice for being a spy.
I did not know that.
This is how his name came out. Well, being immortal for a while, you're going to get in trouble.
I do know that because he was attached to secret societies. He was actually linked to the Rosicrucians and the Freemasons. Not to mention the Asiatic Brothers, the Knights of the Light, and the Order of the Templars. And also, he spent 85 years with the Himalayan Brotherhood.
Yeah, so
85 years, okay?
Yeah, and still looking
45.
What is he smoking? All right,
he's using that deep wrinkle cream.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to break down his timeline and where he was seen from the 1600s all the way up to the early 20th century, when we turn right here on the Talk of Las Vegas, KLAV 1230 AM.
You're listening to the Paranormal and Beyond. Join us at 731-1230. That's 731-1230. Lindsay and Michael return after this. Join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight, for the Paranormal and Beyond. Join host Michael Knight and Lindsay Knight as they investigate the unexplained and most controversial mysteries of the world. The Paranormal and Beyond, where the paranormal lives on and conspiracies exposed. The Paranormal and Beyond, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight. Brought to you by Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com. Your ticket to the unknown is at Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com. UFOs, ghosts, aliens, hauntings, mysterious places, and more can be found at Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com. Knights with a K, Paranormal Research Society.com. Based out of Las Vegas, Nevada, Knights Paranormal Research Society is owned and operated by the renowned brother and sister team of Michael and Lindsay Knight. Seeing is believing. And at Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com, you're going to believe.
I can't remember any day
Welcome back to the Paranormal and Beyond. Join us at 731-1230. Here again, Lindsay and Michael.
All right, if you're just tuning in, we are talking about immortality, about the elusive character Saint-Germain. But remember to check us out at Knights Paranormal Research Society. The website is up and revamped with all those past shows. All right, let's get into it, and let's really go down the timeline, okay? He is more prominent when we talk about, I would say, the 18th century.
Well, in 1740, he became a trusted diplomat in the court of King Louis, I believe the 15th. And he was with King Louis the 15th for a number of years. He was also performing secret missions for him in England.
Yeah, there's that whole spy thing that comes up. I mean, if you're going to hire somebody with knowledge, you're going to hire somebody who knows it all. I mean, this is what that philosopher Voltaire said, that this guy would not die and he knows everything. So if you met somebody like that, it may make you look dumb. He knew everything, pretty much like sheeple today.
Well, this is all, put out there for the ladies who know Casanova, the great lover. Well, in 1760, Casanova actually stated that Germain was an extraordinary man and at least 300 years old. So apparently he told his secrets to Casanova. Casanova also said that Germain knew the secret of universal medicine.
Well, it is said as well that Saint-Germain did tell Casanova that he was 300 years old. That's the only record of where you actually have him confessing about that he is really 300 years old.
So then he doesn't date back to
he
Jesus.
could well he could be
he
lying.
could be lying.
So that's the whole thing about that. Like I said, he knew a lot of these dignitaries throughout society. All right. And, you got now in 1762, he traveled to Russia, where he is said to have a complicit in another conspiracy that placed Catherine the Great on the throne. He later then advised the commander of the Imperial Russian armies in that great war against Turkey, which ultimately they won. Throughout time, this guy had a lot of knowledge. As well, he was very influential.
Yeah, a lot of political influence that he, bestowed upon a lot of great people.
Yeah, and if we go all the way back, when we're talking about the time of Jesus, basically there's also talk that he was the one who actually pushed Jesus into his teachings, and then after his crucifixion, he enforced his, the teachings of Christ. And I think in a gospel he's mentioned, talking to, I think, John the Baptist, or something like that. But like I said, he's in every influential part of history. And then you have now in 1774, he returns back to France when Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette occupied the throne. He allegedly warned them of the revolution that was to come 15 years in the future. And it actually did happen. So now if we look at this guy, okay, now he's a prophet. How does one, okay, now let's think about this. How does one acquire that much knowledge?
With all those different languages, especially, I know he traveled for 40 years extensively.
But that is 40 years only in Europe alone.
That's what I'm saying, and this guy knew, he knew Aramaic, he knew some lost languages, he knew Chinese, and he was fluent in all these different languages, and people were just astounded at how much this guy knew. And it's like, did he travel to, East Asia, America?
Here's the thing. If we take into account the 17th and 18th century, a lot of people did not do a lot of traveling. They did, but it was mostly these pirates or these
Christopher Columbus
traders and stuff like that.
Which, when I say Christopher Columbus, he is actually also supposed to be Christopher Columbus.
Not only that, is also rumored that he met Christopher Columbus, if he wasn't him, and actually gave him a secret map to find the Americas. So this is the most elusive guy that we know about, and he keeps popping up. And he did go through different aliases, but he did use Saint-Germain.
Well, another, you've heard of Francis Bacon, Sir Francis Bacon. He was a philosopher and literary genius who wrote plays and sonnets under Shakespearean name. And apparently, he was supposed to be Shakespeare incognito, but incognito, Francis Bacon was really Saint-Germain.
Oh, interesting. Doesn't that blow your mind? Well, here's the whole thing. When I was researching Francis Bacon, I was thinking that, William Shakespeare was his pen name. Like, you have people in radio, they use different names in radio or on stage, on film. But then I dig deeper. Then I find out Francis Bacon is not Francis Bacon. And I'm like, okay, who is this guy? And to this day, people are still mystified on who really was Shakespeare or Francis Bacon. So now we have another road leading that could this guy be him? Like I said, Saint-Germain was a great writer as well. This guy knew everything, alchemy, and possibly found the elixir to the fountain of youth. Yeah, Ponce de Leon out there looking for it. Absolutely, this guy...
Was he Germain?
No, he should have been. Ponce de Leon should have been looking for Saint-Germain. It would have been in his pocket.
There you go.
But he went through this whole time. But, okay, there's a story that he did die. Because in 1779, he went to Hamburg, Germany, where Prince Charles of Hesse-Kassel befriended him. Okay, and basically took him in. And for the next 5 years... he got sick. So a report went out and he was using his real name again. Saint-Germain was sick. This went out through Germany. But what's weird about this is that upon his death on February 27th, 1784, there's really no record of him dying.
Well, apparently he came back from the dead, didn't he? Because in 1785, he was actually seen again in Germany with Anton Mesmer, a pioneer hypnotist. And this guy, Anton Mesmer, was huge, for him doing hypnotism. And apparently what was, the rumor was that Saint-Germain taught him everything he knew.
That's believable. He comes out through history like it's nothing. I mean, let's talk about war's influence. The French Revolution in 1789. He was said to be there too. And this was the whole thing. And then let's move up. Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, he was said to be there as well. He was the precursor to having them sign the Declaration of Independence.
Well, Saint-Germain was the sponsoring master of the United States of America and of George Washington, the first president. His physical and etheric retreat is the Cave of Symbols in Table Mountain, Wyoming.
Well, could it be that a lot of people are probably thinking, was this guy Illuminati? Could be. He could have been the founder.
Well, it's true because in 1785, I'm actually going back, a little bit. In 1785, he, Freemasonry, the Masonic way, chose Germain as their main representative for a convention in 1785.
Well, he did dabble in secret societies. He would attend meetings in his so-called secret societies. There's, the follower of light, his secret societies in a sense, but we don't really push the Illuminati thing because there's really no sense. But the only thing we could tie that to is Freemasonry, all right? Because he is known to be an influential part of it, as well as Albert Pike, who's basically the manipulator of the Freemasonry and taking it from being Freemason, what it was supposed to be, and turning it into now a gang, a domination control of the world of their sole purpose. But he goes back, and then we have now in 1821, Saint-Germain may have taken another identity because in his memoirs, Albert Vadam wrote, meeting a man who bore a striking resemblance to Count of Saint-Germain, but who went from another name, Major Fraser. Not only that, do you know he was also a general? It's just surprising how this individual gets around. I mean, how popular can you be that somebody is saying, oh, it's him? He's really not out there. When you think about Saint-Germain, a lot of people really think he's like a saint figure, something out of the Bible. But there is, people out there who do worship this guy in that sense. Well, and put him in there as, the bringer of light, basically the father.
There was one person in particular who actually questioned him and was shocked at, the fact that he was not 100 years old, because we're talking about 1760 here in Paris. When he went back to Paris, Countess von Georgi, she was actually the mistress to King Louis at the time. And she actually heard that there was a soiree going on and that Germain was going to be there. And she had seen him, I believe it was about
back.
like 50 years prior, way back.
I think 12 or 17 at the time. She ran into Saint-Germain.
And he was about 45 years old.
Yeah, that's that whole thing when I bring up Dorian Gray, coming into a masquerade ball. And it's like, wow, you just get stumped seeing that. If I seen that today, it would just be amazement. I mean, it's in shock. So a lot of people say, well, why doesn't this Saint-Germain, if he's still alive, come out on TV, talk radio, and talk about this? Well, think about it. If you were immortal, you would have a lot of people out there trying to kill you to see if that's true. And then with our government today, you would have them trying to get him as a guinea pig to find out what does he have that's so different in his DNA. We're talking about immortality here. But we're not talking about that this guy is like Superman, okay? His immortality can put him in a prison for eternity. And that's the scary thing. If I was immortal, I would not want to be got by the government because I would never come out of that laboratory for the rest of eternity, generations through, and I'll be tested. Although I won't die, it would just be a living hell for me for eternity.
Well, apparently, Germain, influenced a lot of people, but in a good way. He wasn't somebody that was like wreaking havoc all across Europe and the United States and wherever else he ventured off to, but he was helping people to master, certain things.
Yeah, he was very, like I said, he knew everything. And the only way you would know like history and languages like that, especially a language, that's what gets me. It said that back in Transylvania he attended this university, but that's hearsay and that he learned all this. But I don't think universities at that time taught like Chinese and all these Arabic languages. Half the people back in that time never even seen China. There was no movie productions unless you were there yourself to see it. And if this guy only traveled 40 years across Europe alone and had to go through history to acquire this in-depth knowledge, like I said, the memoirs from all these dignitaries plays talking to this guy like he's actually been there.
Well, you brought up Major Fraser, and Major Fraser was a guy who was extremely wealthy. Again, nobody knew where this money came from, just like Germain, okay? The knowledge beyond reason with Major Fraser. He knew and spoke several different languages, pretty much the same thing like Germain. Not to mention he looked exactly like Germain, and was about 45 years old, in his mid-40s. And also Major Fraser did speak out on numerous occasions that he knew Nero and Dante. So that dates back way, way, way. I mean, like, why would this guy say that?
Well, okay, let's get into the whole religious aspect. Okay, you have the people who believe that, for face value, that this guy is immortal, right? Then you have those that don't. But then you have the guys who worship him. He does have a big following, and a lot of people wonder, where does the saint come from, Was he sainted by a king or a queen? Where did he achieve his sainthood from?
Well, apparently, Saint-Germain is supposedly an ascended master, which means that he lived through many embodiments, until he passed all of his tests, meaning that, he would come back over and over like in a past life until he got it correct. So he would balance out his karma. And then he was freed from that, of that rebirth, and then he would go into a session. And how he explains that is, him saying, I am ascended and I am an ascended being, but it has not been thus, not once or twice, but many incarnations. I walk the earth as you now do by choosing to be free in the magnificent of God.
That's the whole religious aspect. So when you talk about reincarnating, obviously this guy had died before and then came back and did the whole thing. My whole, basically theory is this guy never died and went through life. It goes all the way back. If you believe mythology, they also point to this guy coming out of Atlantis.
Well, when you come,
and starting the whole European kingdom, when we go all the way to the Merovingian kings and all that.
Well, apparently, for him being an ascended master, when you have past lives, if you believe in that anyways, it's up to you because Jesus died for his sins, and he was crucified and he suffered. So when you, go into the divine and go into heaven, let's just say hypothetically, it's up to you because it's, life is an infinite loop. So if you choose to come back and pretty much perfect what you didn't perfect in your prior life until you got it right, then you can do that. Apparently he wanted to help throughout many different centuries and many different times, but he already ascended to a different level in a different spiritual realm.
Well, we did shows on past lives, okay, and there's a lot of definition on what really is a past life. You have, past life regression. And here's the difference that it's kind of weird to me, because if we're going to believe that theory or that thesis on that religious aspect that, he's basically the man who comes back in time, there's death involved in that, okay? Because the past life that I know today, when we investigate past lives, is you have people who don't remember where they came from unless you put them under hypnosis and do a past life regression, then bits and pieces come out. But this guy takes everything with him. He doesn't forget anything.
Well, that's why he's an ascended master. When you said past lives, there's a lot, that's a broad spectrum because there's so much that we can cover when it comes to past lives. But the people who go through regression, there's things that they do not recall, but it's imprinted in them. And so, a person who says, like, let's just say me, I'm having, chaos going on in my life, and there's things that I remember, that I'm seeing, like, that I don't recall ever doing. I'm thinking, okay, am I just delusional? Am I going crazy? Then you go through hypnosis, and then there's a hypnotist there that actually awakens what's in your mind that has been dormant, and then brings it to light. And then there's clues that that we try to solve, or they try to solve, to see, okay, well, why is this is this person just having a chemical imbalance going on in their brain, or is there an imprint going on, like with the past lives, and it's coming to light now? So there's so many different aspects, but with him, it's like, exactly, he took it with him.
So that's what I'm saying. It's, what do you believe? Do you believe that this guy was what's portrayed in these worshipers who worship Saint Germain as what you just spoke about, as this figure who comes back to do good on the earth, and as far as teachings? Or can this guy be the actual immortal individual who can't help it but teach people because he knows too much? Let's say, like we do now, we talk about conspiracies and we teach people who don't know. You get those looks in your face like, how do you know all this? How do you know all this? It's because you've done your research. Like this guy, I'm sure this guy didn't have a radio show. He probably did, but like us, we have to research stuff so we can have knowledge. So now, people ask us a history quiz. We know everything because we do this. We do our research. But him, the languages and all this compiling on top of everything, it's phenomenal. It's just totally phenomenal. All right, so now there's a lot of theories in there. And let's go by the theory, law of theory right now. There's 5 of them. So first you have the Hermetic theory. That, he said, who he was. He is what it is. He is this guy who actually found an elixir and is immortal. So basically, the Hermetic theory is, it is what it is. That's it. All right? Then you have the Gnostic thesis. And this, when we talk about Gnostic, we're talking now about religion base. Okay? That this guy is a super being who comes down. He is not a man, but he is one with Enoch, Eli, John the Baptist, Jesus Christ, just everything. He is basically not the reincarnation, but basically the Messiah. See, that's a strong, strong word. Then you got the dreaded satanic theory, all right? That this guy is an antichrist figure who's had a big opposition towards the church, okay? And this is when we separate it. And when I talk about that, this guy was basically an immortal vampire to the church. All right, that's the when we talk about satanic, we're talking about demonic, and in one of the 5 theories. So now we're talking about that this guy was an immortal vampire going through life. And wow, how good was it that he came from Transylvania and related to all these?
Never ate in public, right?
Yeah, because he was drinking blood, behind the curtain, and related to Vlad Dracul.
Bathory.
Vlad the Impaler, which Bram Stoker got Dracula from, and Elizabeth Bathory, who was drinking blood like it was wine.
By the way, I just want to say this again. I want to reiterate this. When we talk about Vlad the Impaler, he really was not Dracula. The name Dracul comes from the Order of the God. Order of the Dragon. I'm sorry.
Well, that was his whole gang that he
Right.
had. All right, now you have the fourth theory, which is the Doctor Who theory, okay? When I talk about the Doctor Who, if everybody's seen the show, this is the time traveler guy. This is the guy going from point A to point B, trying not to interfere with life, but has no option because he just runs into situations. And could this guy basically be a time traveler?
And that's what I was thinking.
Well, think about it. He warned, the
Exactly.
European court what was going to happen 15 years later. Now, you talk about prophets and immortality, especially when we're talking about a specific figure, not a group of time travelers, one who's being seen throughout time and history and is being placed a name not by, there could be a lot of Saint Germains, but the face, the way he carried himself is seen.
The difference between him, and I'm just going to, call out one name, Nostradamus. Nostradamus was a prophet, but he was also he told the future. He wrote down his teachings of what he saw in his, in his mind. And, not only that, he was also a sculptor. He did a lot of things like that as well. But Germain, the difference with him, what made him stand out, I believe, is probably because he, even though he did tell, only an elite amount of people that he came across about, certain events in the future that would unfold, he never really put it out there. He was very private, like with his alchemy and so forth and so on.
He's been asked, throughout his lifetime, people tend to question, especially seeing, you see your old friend from 20 years and they don't change. They stay not one wrinkle, not one gray hair. It's very questionable. Like I said, he never denied, but never admitted to anything. But to that Casanova character, he did admit he was 300 years old. Although, there's talk when we go back to older memoirs and text, he is mentioned throughout time. I mean, how far back does this guy go? Or could this guy be really from the future, like I said in the fourth Doctor Who theory, and is basically traveling back through time, changing stuff to what we see today? Like, let's say this. Okay, we talk about time travel here real quick. You would think that the question is, if there's time travelers, how come we don't see him? What, you've asked that before. Why don't we see him? If there was a time traveler who did go back and change the past, you would never know because you are living on this current timeline.
Oh, yeah.
It would look like life. You see Back to the Future, they go back, change, 1985.
And you will never know. It's washed from your memory.
Yeah, you never know because you are on that. You're basically living on that plateau, on that dimension. So we will never know that he was actually a time traveler.
Well, you know who Madame Blavatsky is, right? She's a theosophical high society mystic. And this is in the 1900s. She states, she was very well known, very famous for her time for the mysticism that she knew, and the stuff that she put out. But there was a picture that was taken with her in Saint-Germain, and she clearly stated he is alive and well.
That's a scary thing.
And this is the 1900s.
Yeah, we're not talking about word of mouth or anything. And now you're getting proof with photography. And I don't know if they're comparing it to paintings of him in the past, but there was an engraved carving of him that was done of Saint Germain, and that's that famous, engraving of him. Because back then they had to engrave you to take a picture.
Well, there was, one last known entry of Saint Germain, which was in 1972, and I don't know if this guy was delusional or if he really was Saint Germain. He did look like him, though, by the way. But it was, this guy was. This is back in Paris again. He always ends up back in Paris, by the way. Richard Chantefray announced he was the legendary Count and appeared on French TV. When he appeared on French TV, people ask, okay, how are you going to claim that you're Saint Germain, and what are you going to do to show us that you really are who you are? Well, what he did was, his infamous alchemy. He got a stove. There was a stove there. He turned lead into gold.
But they didn't really believe him.
No, they didn't.
They didn't really believe him because it is said that Chantefray committed suicide in 1983. Could this be where
He
Again,
disappeared?
He has to disappear, so he has to hide his death. Like this thing.
Major Frazier disappeared as well, and people were wondering what happened to him.
Could he be? See, I would do the same thing. I would disappear and hide out. You do not want to be in the public's eye, especially in this day and age, because if they find out you're immortal, you're going to live the rest of eternity through hell.
You know, this always brings me back to the movie Highlander, because they always had to hide. And I know that's just a TV show, you know, and that's fiction. But regardless, it's pretty much like the same thing without cutting off the head.
Exactly, but if he was going around doing that, he'd end up in a prison for the rest of eternity. All right, there's the fifth theory, and we're going to wrap it up with this, and that's the prosaic theory. And this is where a fictional character is made up by, let's say, the government to take your eyes to basically the scapegoat. So could basically Saint-Germain be this fictional character that was made out throughout time to give an explanation on who Francis Bacon was, who, you know, this guy was. And like I said, you have to basically give somebody something, a bone to chew on, to give them an answer, to basically shut them up, you know, on who this is. So let's make up a fictional character.
And, you know, and I don't believe that at all. You know, 0% do I believe that, because, you know, throughout history in different eras of time, there has been many, dignitaries, you know, people in high society who has written memoirs and, you know, autobiographies. There was actually a book written too in I think it was the 16 or 1700s that was by a guy named Saint-Germain.
Yeah. So what's your belief in this? Out of the 5 theories by law, do you think he is what he is and is still alive today, walking around, but under a different name? Or could possibly be somebody that is in the public eye, but we don't know? Or could he be this spiritual being? Could he be satanic? Could he be a time traveler? Or could he be just this made-up fictional character? What do you think?
You know, it's kind of hard to say. I think that I really don't know. I really don't. You know, I would love to know. I would love to know where, you know, that wrinkle cream is at. But I personally believe that this is a guy who, you know, does pop up during, you know, different times and different centuries and is immortal. How he is immortal, I have no idea. I don't know whether it's, you know, the Gnostic theory or, you know, the first theory that you know, brought out.
Hermetic theory.
The Hermetic theory, yeah.
Which it is what it is. I kind of lean to the time travel. Although, do I believe time travel? Who knows? Like I said, if there was time travel going on, I know there'd be strict laws about it in the future that prevent people from messing things up. Or could there be right now people messing things up? You know, could Obama be a time traveler and just mess up the United States? We don't know, because we live in the now. They live in the then and the future. So like I said, when it comes to time travel, it's a very, very sketchy thing. And, you know, we got to do a show on it. However, it's basically just up in the air when we talk about time travel. But I lean towards something like that as far as the knowledge and him turning, you know, ordinary stuff into gold. There's a lot of powers of knowledge there that supersedes anything in the past that you can know right away until you lived an entire lifetime. All right, that's our show for you today. Join us back here Monday. Everybody stay safe, enjoy your weekend, and have a good day. Bye-bye.